Well, good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us. My name is Joe Testa. I'm Deputy Chief of the Livermore Pleasanton Fire Department, and I had the honor of organizing this morning's event. I know that many of you have joined us in person over the years at our annual September 11th remembrance. While this year we're still under the COVID warning, and as of this morning, as you can see, having to use scene lighting, we're also under this new threat of this heavy, unhealthy smoke in the area. We weren't able to do an in-person event this year, so we wanted to invite you to do a live streaming event so that we could still come together for this important day. Before we get started with the official ceremony, I wanted to introduce to you the people that are going to be here and tell you what we're going to do. And the ceremony itself will officially start at 6:59 this morning. So in order to honor the 2,977 people who lost their lives the morning of September 11th, we've gathered here today and invited some very special people to be here, even though we couldn't invite you to be here with us today. So first I would like to introduce from the Pleasanton Police Department, Chief Swing and Captain Eicher. I'd also like to introduce from the Livermore Pleasanton Fire Department, Chief Lacey. And I'd briefly like to say that the Livermore Police Department was not able to be here this morning. They had an emergency come up that prevented them from being here. I'd also like to introduce to you ahead of time the Livermore Pleasanton Fire Department Honor Guard, who's standing to my right or your left, and they'll be doing most of the remembrance this morning that you'll get to watch. So before we get started with the official part of the ceremony, I'm just going to talk to you briefly about what's going to happen. So at 7:59 this morning, our dispatch center, the Alameda County Regional Emergency Communications Center, is going to do a broadcast and a tribute that they do every year for us. And that's going to be followed by a moment of silence that I hope you'll join us in from home. That'll be about a minute that we can reflect on the impact that it had, and for some of us, as it's 19th anniversary, maybe a moment to think about something that they weren't even alive for or old enough to know what was going on for. But after that moment of reflection, we're going to raise the flag and then lower it to half-mast. Our honor guard's going to do that. And then I'm going to invite you to join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. For the Pledge of Allegiance, I'll ask everybody at home to please rise. For those of you who are military or sworn public safety, we'll ask you to salute. For everyone else, we'll ask you to cover your heart with your right hand while we recite the pledge. Then I'll invite Chief Lacey to come up and say a few words on some very local impacts that we had that are related to September 11th and the war on terrorism. And then lastly, we'll close the ceremony out with the ringing of the bell, and we'll talk a little bit about the meaning of that to people that work in public safety. So we've got about 6 minutes before that broadcast starts. So I hope you'll take that time to grab a cup of coffee and join us back here in about 6 minutes. Thank you. About a minute, our dispatch center will do their annual broadcast via the radio. I know that you're able to hear at home, and they just dispatched a structure fire, so if they're not able to do their annual broadcast, we'll go ahead and provide the message that they would have provided. But we'll wait about a minute and see if our dispatch center is able to provide that.
Flying 4, Engine 13, Engine 22, truck tow, responding to Summer Hill Terrace Apartments, Building 3, Zone 1, first floor pull station, no result at the moment, Tech 3, response Tech 3.
That's that fire dispatch.
Attention all stations. As part of the September 11th Patriot Day Remembrance and the collapse of the South Tower of the World Trade Center, please observe 1 minute of silence to honor the lives lost that day. Attention all stations. As part of the September 11th Patriot Day Remembrance and the collapse of the South Tower of the World Trade Center, please observe 1 minute of silence to honor the lives lost that day.
Thank you.
Flag detail, all out. Uniform personnel, present, hunt!
For those of you who are at home and are able to, please rise and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Out there! Hunt! Rest.
Chief Lee.
Good morning. Ladies and gentlemen, and all of our viewers from home, we want to thank you for being with us today for this 19th year of remembrance. And although with the COVID-19 pandemic, things can't be how we'd like it normally, we still stand here today and find a way to remember and honor all of those that made the ultimate sacrifice that day on 9/11/2001. Many people paid the ultimate sacrifice, and many lives have been altered since September 11th, 2001. Today, I would like to recognize and tell a brief story of two, Mr. Thomas Burnett Jr. and U.S. Army Specialist Jameson Linscott. We tell their stories because they're not forgotten. We tell their stories so generations yet unborn will never forget their memory in the sacrifices they made for our country. Thomas Burnett Jr. Thomas Burnett was the Vice President and Chief Operating Officer of Thoratech Corporation, a medical device company based here in Pleasanton, California. He resided in San Ramon, California, and on September 11, 2001, Mr. Burnett was one of several passengers on board United Airlines Flight 93, which was hijacked as part of the 9/11 attacks on our country. He led, along with other passengers, formed a plan to retake the plane from hijackers that resulted in the plane crashing into a field near Shanksville, Pennsylvania, stopping the hijackers' plan to fly yet another plane into a building believed to be either the White House or the U.S. Capitol. Thank you, Mr. Burnett, for your sacrifice and for your service to our country. U.S. Combat Medic Specialist Jameson Linscott. Specialist Linscott was the first Pleasanton native to be killed in Afghanistan during Operation Enduring Freedom. He was awarded the Silver Star for heroism. On the 29th of March 2011, he selfishly ran into heavy enemy fire in order to provide medical aid to fallen soldiers. Even after being mortally wounded himself, Jameson refused to be airlifted out of and continued to provide medical aid and instruction to help others until he succumbed to his injuries. Jameson was proud to be an EMT medic of the 101st Airborne. Thank you for your service and sacrifice, Mr. Linscott. I'd like to now bring back Chief Testa for the introduction of the ringing of the bell ceremony.
Thank you, Chief Lacey. Before we close the ceremony out with the ringing of the bell, I do want to take a moment and thank Alan Hammond with Pleasanton IT. He's the one that's provided the live streaming and allowed all of us to come together this morning, albeit we couldn't do it in person. Being together virtually, I think is the next best thing, and we couldn't do it without him. So thank you, Alan, who's behind the camera. You can't see him. So to close out with the ringing of the bell. Throughout most of history, the lives of firefighters have been closely associated with the ringing of the bell. As they began their hours of duty, it was the bell that started off their shift. Throughout the day and night, each alarm was sounded by a bell that called them to fight fire and to place their lives in jeopardy for the good of their fellow man. As a matter of fact, behind us are Livermore and Pleasanton's original bells that summoned volunteer firefighters to action. And when the fire was out and the alarm had come to an end, the bell rang 3 times to signal the end of that shift, the end of that emergency. And in order to honor the 60 fallen police officers on September 11th and the 343 fallen firefighters who were killed on September 11th, we offer them a ringing of the bell as the last alarm.
Uniform personnel, advantage, huh!
This concludes the ceremony. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Each, just